AfriKili family, Global Pack Nation. Welcome to the Global Pack Show. This is your host, Tony Fumun Simba. Well, on this Monday, January 27, 2025, happy Monday to you. And we'll be discussing two very interesting topics. First topic, well, it seems like President Donald Trump's ban on DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion measures, well, seem to have influenced the U.S. Air Force into reviewing some of its training courses, discussing the Tuskegee Airmen, which were Black Air Force soldiers who accomplished tremendous accomplishment during the Second World War. And then our second topic today, we will follow up on what I started last week, which is the war that is unfolding in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo in a town called Goma. Well, Goma has fallen, or has it? So there you have it. Those are the two topics that will bring us together today in our new format, our new live shows. Well, before we get started, let me just, first of all, thank you. Thank to all of you who have been supporting this show, supporting this channel since we began our new live show format, this G-PAC or Global Pack format 2 weeks ago, which, as a reminder, essentially works to create coalition and build bridges across the global Pan-African diaspora, the global Pan-African community. And when we say the global Pan-African community here, we references to people of African descent, people on the African continent, and the entire Pan-African diaspora across the world. So that's our Global Pack, Global Pan-African community, Global Pan-African diaspora. So thank you to all of you who are supporting us since we launched this live show, as I said, 2 weeks ago. And to everybody else, let me ask you to please make sure you support us, send your comment, but also subscribe to the channel. It only takes you a minute to click on the subscribe button and also on the notification bell so that as new episodes come across, you will be notified as we release new episodes. So there we have it. This should be a very interesting show. Now, the last two times, as I have been fine-tuning this concept and so on, I kept saying this would be a very short live. Well, today the goal is to really keep it way under 30 minutes, so that can become the norm and reserve the longer format for our discussions and our interviews that are coming up. So there you have it. All right, so first topic, Tuskegee Airmen. And as a matter of fact, let me see if I can bring up a... We're launching this topic, and you should be able to see it on the screen. Let me see here. Absolutely. All right, so this is an interesting article. So that's the first topic we will discuss today. It has to do with the Tuskegee Airmen and how President Trump's DEI measure, one of his DEI executive order measures that he took last week, specifically eliminating or suspending DEI efforts within the federal government, how those measures influence the Air Force. As a reminder, what are DEI measures? So DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those are measures designed to address some of the inequalities amongst many of the government agencies to make sure that minorities were well represented. Well, Donald Trump suspended all those measures. Guess what? So this, I came across this last Friday is when this news was first reported, and it was quite frankly very shocking. And this is a news story that has evolved quite drastically to the point where we are today. There's been a great evolution, which will stress the fact that I constantly make on this platform, the importance of uniting and speaking powerfully under one voice. And you will see why in a few minutes. But first of all, what exactly are these Tuskegee Airmen? All right, because I mentioned it many times. You might not be familiar with the U.S. history, or even people within the United States might not necessarily know what the Tuskegee Airmen, who they are. Well, this is a series of as soldiers. Okay, so they're all Air Force pilots who, during the Second World War, were trained in the segregated air base in Tuskegee, in Alabama, between 1941 and 46. And so it was a black, all composed of black soldiers, so black airmen, black pilots. Well, they flew countless missions between 1941 to 1946, whether it's supporting operation, escorting U.S. bombing crews across Europe, but they had a tremendous impact. Well, unfortunately, the accomplishment of the Tuskegee Airmen for the longest was kept under wraps. For example, there was the very first Top Gun competition, which was a competition with between different Air Force pilots. You had different skills that had to be performed and so on and so forth. Well, the winners of that first Air Force Top Gun competition, guess what? It was these Tuskegee Airmen, these black pilots. Well, that was actually never reported, and for the longest, that news story, for example, was not reported. The trophy that the Tuskegee Airmen won, for example, that trophy was never displayed amongst the Air Force Museum and so on. It was only uncovered many years later when finally that story was brought to the forefront. But this is just another example, right, of many accomplishments that prominent black men and women were able to accomplish through a time, but unfortunately was left off the history books for one reason or another, whether it's bigotry, all just sort of racism and so on. But this was just another case of that. But thankfully, the Air Force had decided a long time ago to include the accomplishment of these Tuskegee Airmen in its Air Force curriculum. But guess what? Unfortunately, when Donald Trump came into power and he signed his series of executive orders last week, he's been going, there's been all kind of signatures here, renaming the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. So many executive orders, but like the specific DI executive order influenced what the Air Force was to teach. So actually the headline on Friday was that the Air Force, due to the executive order, was removing the history of the Tuskegee Airmen. That's how the headline initially came through across multiple news story, whether it's the BBC, CBS, you name it. That unsurprisingly caused a tremendous uproar. And so then, not too short after that, the story then evolved, going from eliminating the accomplishment from the training material. I should clarify here, we're talking about training material. So as soldiers go into the Air Force, as they're getting trained, following certain curriculum, well, it is that curriculum that on Friday was announced that the Tuskegee Airmen accomplishment would have been removed. But as I say, then the uproar started. You had some senators who actually using Twitter or X, voicing their displeasure and so on and so forth. And so Hegseth, who is the guy who was just confirmed last week, also responded to some of the tweets saying that yes, this would be revised. And so we went from removing it, and then we had new headlines coming out. So the Air Force announced that no, we're not removing the accomplishment of the Tuskegee Airmen, but we're revising the curriculum. And then finally, the announcement is what you can see right now on the screen, which the Air Force says it will continue teaching about those black pilots, the Tuskegee Airmen. So this is an interesting evolution here. So we went once again from saying that this will be removed to now to revise, and then now this will be taught. So I think the larger point here, AfriKili family and global pack nation is what? The larger point is that many of these measures that are taken will impact our global pack community, as was the case here. Accomplishment of prominent Black soldiers might have been removed from this curriculum had it not been for this uproar. But these measures will continue. So it is ever so important as a community to remain vigilant, to ensure that we can utilize our voice when we identify cases of injustice, cases of policies taken that will negatively impact our community. It is important to utilize our voice, come together and speak up to that effect and demand change. So this to me was an interesting story, but also just stressing the fact that civil action is needed. There is still an ability to change things and impact things for the better. I know in this current time, so many people are disappointed with maybe the political climate and so on and so forth, but understand that complaining without acting will not lead to any solution. So it is important to be involved and participate to change things. So that was the first quick story I wanted to touch upon. What happened with the Tuskegee Airmen. I encourage you to actually go ahead and view this story if you want. You can continue following it. It's an interesting story on BBC, but many different news outlets have reported it. And so if you want to know more about the Tuskegee Airmen and so on, I highly recommend viewing and reading this article. Okay, so that's the Tuskegee Airmen. The second story I want to talk about has to do with Goma. And so what happened in Goma, let me bring up the article here for you to see on the screen. So this is a follow-up, right, to the story I began discussing during some of our live shows last week. If you recall, I talked about how the rebel groups were closing in rapidly on the city of Goma, which is in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is in itself is a country in Central Africa. So I'm going to bring up this map here so that you can see for yourself. This is important to know, and hopefully by the end of this discussion, you will understand why. First of all, Goma, you might not be familiar where Goma is. So as I mentioned, it's in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This map that you see here, so you can see on the top left of your screen, I believe, on the top left of your screen, there is the circle showcasing the entire African continent. And right in the center, you see that red square. So that represents where the Democratic Republic of the Congo is. So it's the second biggest country in Africa. It's right in the center of Africa. And now, the bigger map that you see with the biggest border, it says DR Congo in the middle of it. So that's the country itself. Now, if you look on the eastern part of that country, you will see Goma, Goma. So that's where that city is located. Totally on the opposite side of the capital city, which is on the west, in a city called Kinshasa. Now, what is happening here, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, G-PAC nation, is of prominent importance, is of primordial importance, okay, with the technology world, with also what we are, with our lives, our everyday lives here in the United States, but also across the world. I am personally connected to this story. That is true because that country happens to be the country in which I was born, and obviously still have a lot of family and so on and so forth. Nevertheless, this is a situation that has been ongoing for over 30 years. That's 30. For over 30 years, there has been a conflict in that part of the world, in that part of Africa, in that part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And this is for no other reason than that part of Africa being extremely wealthy in terms of natural mineral resources. With some estimates, if you just took the mineral resources under the soil of that country, and if that was to be obviously mined and transformed, that would make this country the wealthiest country in the world. All right? So, but again, we're just talking about natural mineral resource. But unfortunately, in terms of the population, it is one of the poorest population, financially speaking, in the world, with one of the lowest GDP, because there has been nonstop conflict to take advantage and plunder the resources in that part of Africa, in that part of the world. Now, those minerals, why are they, what is it even important for us to understand? Well, guess what? Our cell phones, our laptops, today we talk about the energy transition, where you will need a proliferation of storage batteries, for example. We have the electric vehicles. Well, the resources for all those pieces of technology, the mineral, in large part, come from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So whether it's Apple with the iPhones, the Samsung with the smartphones and so on, the Androids, the Teslas with the electric vehicles, the Chinese companies, the BYDs with the electric vehicles. So all of that technology relies on minerals that come from that part of Africa, as you can see on that map. But for 30 years, people have been killed. There have been conflict for the control of those minerals. And unfortunately, there's this rebel group called the M23. Now, this article that I put here on the map, it's again an article from BBC, but you can find it in many different places. I think does a good job at explaining what the M23 is and so on. So the rebel group, the current representation of this rebel group, because there has been so many rebel groups over the years, but this M23 is essentially, M stands for May, the month of May. So May 23, 2009. So it's what this rebel group calls itself. It's in reference to that date, May 23rd, 2009. Why that date? Well, because this rebel group essentially, which is made of people of a Tutsi ethnic background. The Tutsis are an ethnic group located primarily in East Africa and Rwanda, part of Uganda, Burundi, Kenya, Sudan. So it's that part of Africa, in Eastern Africa. Well, this M23 group came with under the pretense that they are protecting the Tutsi minorities that would supposedly be persecuted and killed in Eastern Congo. This is just a quick historical fact, and it's hard to talk about this in a 10-minute discussion. It, as I said, it has been going on for so long. You need more in-depth reading and discussion for you to fully grasp the magnitude of this problem. But I'm just giving you a quick summary here, and I encourage you to, after this show, to really dig deep into this. Because see, too many times, and I understand it, when something is far from our eyes and far from our daily lives, it's hard for us to feel involved. But understand once again that those minerals coming from that part of Africa impact our everyday lives in the West. Even though the media has done a good job to keep that under wraps and really cover those stories, and we don't really usually get that reporting. But you guys are watching me today on YouTube. We all use our smartphones. Many people are driving electric vehicles and so on. We talk about renewable energy, solar with storage batteries and so on. Well, all of that is connected to the Congo. So I strongly urge you to at least keep following that situation and understand what's happening. But anyhow, so this M23 group, so they had signed an agreement back then with the Congolese government, and so the agreement was that they would have disbanded, and then their soldiers would have been brought into the regular army and be part of the regular army going forward. Well, guess what? They ended up again saying that the government did not respect its agreement, and that's why they reformed. So after initially back then in 2009, they had rebelled and they had taken over the city of Goma. But then they were pushed back by the Congolese forces, but also there's a UN contingency, the United Nations, that has the biggest military force in the world based in the Congo. So they worked with the Congolese army to push back the M23 back then. And so after that, they disbanded and they were inserted into the regular forces, the military force of the country. And that was part of the agreement of the disbanding of the force. But then ultimately, they say the government did not respect some of the agreements they had that they had signed. And so they formed again. And so that's the new iteration of the current movement. But that's on the surface. It would appear that underneath the surface, this movement is actually supported by the neighboring country of the Congo called Rwanda. So if I can bring up that map again, once again, where is that map? You see that next to Goma, there's something called Rwanda. So Rwanda is a country with its capital city, Kigali, as you can see on the map. Well, the country of Rwanda has now been proven to be the supporters of this M23 movement. And what's the interest of Rwanda here? It is also believed that for the longest, Rwanda had gained support from some of the Western interest, multinational and so on, who back then had already been in conflict with the former regime in the Congo. So you needed Rwanda to be able to protect some of the multinational interests for the mining of these minerals, so that those minerals could exit the Congo under the veil. With all this war unfolding, believe me, the mining is still continuing. But those minerals are not exported primarily from the Congo. So they crossed the border into the neighboring country, primarily Rwanda, and then exported from there. So Rwanda is the main supporter of the M23 movement. And it's not just me saying it. As I said, it now has been proven. As a matter of fact, this article references reports that were put together by the United Nations showcasing that the country of Rwanda is actually the ones behind this M23 rebel group. So let me stop with the historical fact here. Let me remove the map from the screen so we can just continue this discussion very rapidly and move on. So this to me is a very sad state of affairs. And I've actually been talking about this for the longest. I remember when I used to be a student back then, I created a student-led group. And one of our missions was to bring to the forefront some of the atrocities that were happening in the Congo, so that we would bring more, light to it and people would become more aware. So we did, when I was a student, I did conferences, brought together people. So it's something that has been ongoing for a while. But the point I really want to make here, and I think this is the important point. There is an expression, right, that says that a house cannot be destroyed from the outside unless it is rotten from the inside. And I think this saying applies to, it can be a house, it can be a community, it can be a nation, it can be a coalition. You will only be destroyed from the outside if you're weak or rotten on the inside. And this here has to serve a lesson. Congo has been accusing Rwanda for the longest, and it is a fact that Rwanda has been utilized by other foreign interests to attack its neighboring country, the Congo. But if those attacks were effective, it's because the Congo within itself was weak and rotten because of an elite, a political elite that was rotten to the core and was not working to advance the interest of the people. So if we take Africa as a whole, so we look at Rwanda being influenced from the outside, again, that would not happen unless you had stronger opposition forces. Now let me transition into other places within the global PAC. Remember, when I say G-PAC, global PAC, I'm referencing to the Global Pan-African Community, Global Pan-African Coalition, whether it's here in the United States, people of African descent. Too often, measures taken to weaken our global PAC communities succeed because we're internally weak, or we're not strong enough or united to an extent where we can repel attacks from the outside. So the message here is really about unity and involvement. It is ever so crucial for those of us that are capable to really understand that we must unite, we must work hand in hand, we must attack some of these problems in a unified and in a united way if we want to succeed. Enough is enough. Our people have suffered for too long. When I see the suffering in Goma as I'm following the unfolding of this situation, it is heartbreaking. When I consider also some of the suffering of our people within the global PAC, it is unfortunate, but a lot of that can change. It has gone on for too long, and the time for action is now, which is why I constantly advance the mission of the G-PAC, the global PAC, and AfriKili, our mission being to build coalitions, strong coalitions, and to build bridges across the Pan-African community and the Pan-African diaspora, Pan-African coalition. We need that to address some of the issues effectively. But let me start concluding by saying, sure, as bleak as the situation is, or might look, I strongly believe that we have the ability to influence situations for the best. I'm proposing it within a G-PAC platform that will bring us together. So I really encourage you once again to join. You can go and subscribe to this channel if you want to remain part of the conversation and be kept informed as we move and address new situations. If not for the G-PAC, if not for AfriKili, I strongly encourage you to join another platform, another movement that you might feel suits you better. But the key element here is action, is going forward. We can't keep complaining or just stating issues for the longest. Action is ever so important. Political involvement is important. Many of these issues that I mentioned during this live show today, whether it's the DEI suspension measures by President Trump, whether it's this conflict happening in Goma, a lot of this, or all of them, are the result of some political action taken. And so for us to counter this, it is important for us to be involved politically as well. Political measures will require political measures to counter them. So as a global PAC community. I mean, I can't stress that enough, ladies and gentlemen. It is important for us to be involved. The past is the past, okay? We cannot change the past. What is done is done. But what we can certainly do is mold the future, influence the future so that it will be a better place for all of us. This conflict in Goma can stop overnight if there are enough voices raised, if there is enough targeted political action that can demand change from the actors that are hiding behind all these soldiers, that can really impose that the situation change. It can, trust me, the situation can end overnight, because the bottom line, it's economic interest. So there are players that are pulling the strings behind this, but we cannot, and these are powerful interests, by the way. So it cannot just be changed by just having one person talking or a dispersed effort. It requires concerted effort. All these DEI measures being taken in the United States and actions that we believe negatively impact minorities, G-PAC members in the United States and others, will require political participation so that we can really weight heavily on the scales and demand change. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end up here for today. As is the case with all of our shows, our live show, I like to end on a positive note with a quote. A positive quote that hopefully uplifts all of us and lets us know that it is not only essential for us to keep moving forward, but it is possible. And as I'm preparing this, let me also remind you to please like this show if you like this content, subscribe to the channel if you like our content, share your comments, share your feedback so that we may improve this platform as it's growing. I really count on your support. I have no doubt that this platform is on the way up, and we will achieve tremendous milestone in 2025, and we'll do it together. But I do need your support, so make sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment. All right, so the quote I want to end this show with today is a quote by none other than one of my favorite individuals in history. I mentioned that Martin Luther King was one of my heroes last week, but certainly not the only one. There are many, many tremendous individuals in the global pack. And so the quote today is from none other than Nelson Madiba Mandela, the former leader and president of South Africa, who spent 27 years in jail as a result of his fight against apartheid. And so his quote simply says that a winner is a dreamer who never gives up. A winner is a dreamer who never gives up. AfriKili family, Global Pack Nation, I am certainly a winner, but I also know that many of us in the G-PAC are winners. And as such, we cannot give up. Let's continue fighting. Let's continue advancing until we reach our objectives. Until next time, let's continue working together to build strong coalition and bridges across the global Pan-African diaspora, the global Pan-African communities, the global pack. Thank you very much. Peace be with you. Asante sana, which means thank you very much in Swahili. And remember, we are the global pack.